I still remember the chilling day I decided to push the limits of adventure, a decision that changed my life forever. It was late January. The air was crisp, and the snow blanketed the slopes of Mount Asheville like a gleaming white quilt. I was with my two best friends, Leo and Ethan, on our annual ski trip. This year, we had decided to challenge ourselves, to go beyond the well-worn trails and venture into the unmarked wilderness. Little did we know, this decision would lead us into a nightmare we could never have imagined. The morning began innocently enough. We were all 24, in the prime of our lives, full of energy and a thirst for excitement. The slopes were alive with skiers and snowboarders, carving their paths down the pristine snow. But for us, the thrill of the marked trails had waned over the years. We craved something dangerous. You know, Ethan said as we sat sipping hot cocoa in the ski lodge, I heard it here is an unmarked trail on the north side of the mountain. They say it's for the pros only. Leo's eyes lit up with excitement. The north side? Isn't that where the old avalanche zone is? Ethan shrugged. Yeah, but it hasn't had any incidents in years. Besides, we're not amateurs. We've got this. I hesitated. There was a knot of unease in my stomach, but I ignored it. I didn't want to be the one to spoil the fun. All right, I said, feigning confidence. Let's do it. We geared up, excitement buzzing between us like electricity. As we rode the lift to the summit, the air grew colder and thinner. The marked trails were behind us now, and the only sound was the whisper of the wind and the creak of the lift's cables. At the summit, we disembarked, and Ethan led us to a barely visible trailhead marked with an old, weathered sign that read, Danger, Unmarked Terrain. Leo grinned. Looks inviting. We set off, carving our way through untouched snow. The trees grew denser, their skeletal branches reaching out like twisted fingers. At first, it was exhilarating. The snow was powdery and perfect, and the silence of the wilderness was oddly soothing. But as we descended further, the terrain grew steeper, and the trees seemed to close in around us. After about an hour, we paused to catch our breath. How much further does this go? I asked, my voice muffled by my scarf. Ethan pulled out his map, which was more of a rough sketch than a reliable guide. Not much farther. We'll hit the main trail again soon. But the map didn't account for the twists and turns we'd taken. As we pushed on, the terrain became almost vertical in some places, forcing us to navigate carefully. Then, as if out of nowhere, we hit a dropa sheer cliff masked by the snow. Leo stopped just in time, his skis teetering on the edge. Whoa, he exclaimed, his face pale. That was close. We peered over the edge. The drop was at least 30 feet, leading to a rocky, snow-covered ledge below. We can't go back, Ethan said, his tone uneasy. It's too steep to climb. So we jump? Leo asked, half joking. Ethan nodded grimly. It's our only option. We just have to land right. One by one, we jumped. My heart pounded as I launched myself off the edge, the cold air slicing past me. I hit the ledge hard, the impact jarring but manageable. Ethan and Leo landed moments later, both unscathed. But as we looked around, it became clear that we were lost. The landscape was unrecognizable, a labyrinth of trees and snow with no discernible path. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to dance ominously. We need to find shelter, I said, trying to keep the panic from my voice. We trudged on, the snow crunching under our boots. Just as the last light faded, we spotted a structure in the distance, a cabin, partially hidden by the trees. Relief washed over us. Finally, Leo said, his voice trembling with exhaustion. We approached the cabin cautiously. It was old and weathered, with broken windows and a sagging roof. The door creaked loudly as Ethan pushed it open. Inside, it was dark and cold, but it offered some semblance of safety. There was a fireplace, a rickety table, and a few chairs, all covered in a thick layer of dust. This will do, Ethan said, dropping his pack. Let's get a fire going. Leo and I gathered what little dry wood we could find while Ethan worked on starting a fire. Soon, the cabin was bathed in the warm glow of the flames. For a moment, we felt safe, but then came the noises. At first, it was faint as soft scraping sound, like branches brushing against the cabin walls. We dismissed it as the wind, but as the night wore on, the noises grew louder and more distinct. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling the cabin. Did you hear that? I whispered, my heart pounding. Leo nodded, his face pale. It's probably just an animal, but deep down, we all knew it wasn't. Suddenly, there was a loud bang on the door. We froze, the fire casting flickering shadows on the walls. Ethan grabbed a fireplace poker, holding it like a weapon. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice trembling. There was no answer, just more banging. And then, the door began to creak open on its own. A gust of icy wind blew in, extinguishing the fire. We were plunged into darkness. In the dim moonlight, we could make out a figure standing in the doorway. It was tall and cloaked in shadows, its face obscured. My blood ran cold as it stepped inside, its movements unnaturally jerky. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Leo and Ethan. We bolted out the back door, into the freezing night. The figure didn't follow, but the sound of its footsteps echoed behind us. We ran blindly through the forest, the cold air burning our lungs. My legs felt like lead, but adrenaline kept me moving. Eventually, we stumbled upon a small clearing. Gasping for breath, we huddled together, trying to make sense of what had just happened. "What was that?" Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know, but we can't stay here." We pressed on, the forest seeming to close in around us. The shadows seemed alive, shifting and writhing in the moonlight. Every sound made me jump: the crack of a branch, the howl of the wind, the distant echo of footsteps. Hours passed, or maybe just minutes. Time seemed to blur. Just when I thought we couldn't go any further, we stumbled upon a road. Relief flooded through me as I saw headlights in the distance. We flagged down the car, a battered pickup truck driven by an elderly man. He looked at us with a mix of concern and confusion as we climbed in, shivering and pale. "What happened to you boys?" he asked, his voice tinged with worry. We didn't know how to answer. How could we explain what we'd seen? Instead, we sat in silence as he drove us back to the lodge. When we finally returned, it was as if we'd emerged from another world. The warmth of the lodge, the chatter of other skiers, the glow of the fireplace, it all felt surreal. To this day, I don't know what we encountered in that cabin, but I do know one thing: I'll never venture off the marked trails again.